Hi, and welcome back to That Was the Week That Was. Today's show is the 36th of 2023, and it's been a quiet week in the world for once, and yet, even so, there have been some quite startling statements made this last week. But before we get into that, let's welcome once again Vince McLeod of the Alternative Centre, who's joining us once again from Nelson. How are you today, Vince?
Hello, Bob, and hello, Internet. I'm doing well again today. I think the fear of nuclear annihilation has been slightly less this week, so it's felt like a little bit quieter this week. But otherwise, feeling good, enjoying the start of the spring. It's nice sunny weather here in Nelson this week.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's just jump straight into it then. This week, CNN published excerpts from an upcoming biography of Elon Musk, claiming that he turned off Starlink in order to prevent a Ukrainian drone attack on Russia's naval fleet. Musk responded to the report, making the first strange allegation of the week by saying that he had chosen not to enable the attack as he did not want to become directly involved in the war. But one way or another, he did become directly involved, didn't he, Vince?
Musk's action made me think of what Jean-Paul Sartre said when he said that even the decision to not make an action is still an action. You're still making a decision that causes you to not be involved in the war. That is still an action in a very real sense. So Elon Musk has taken a side. He said that he wants to be neutral, which is hard because there's so much propaganda trying to push people behind the Ukrainian side right now, especially in the West. And he quite reasonably doesn't want to be involved. He understands that if this issue escalates further, there's a risk of nuclear war and the total annihilation of the human species. So Elon Musk quite rationally, doesn't want to be involved in causing any escalation. So I don't think he's to blame at all, in my opinion.
Mm. Well, what are the ethical implications of allowing businessmen to alter the course of world events without democratic accountability?
I'm not in favor of rule by merchants myself, but then again, I'm also not in favor of democracy. So to my mind, having to choose between merchants or democracy is really a double-edged sword, and we can't possibly win. I think really we have to find a new ethical basis for life in the West. And I think we need to move past the idea that a person's total amount of wealth accumulated is somehow equivalent to their moral virtue, because it doesn't work following rich people. We saw that with John Key in New Zealand. Just because he's worth $50 million doesn't actually mean he can make better moral decisions. So, yeah, I think we need a new way of looking at things, a new philosophy, new ethical philosophy for the West.
Oh, I support that. All right, the second audacious statement of the week occurred in India last week, where the invitations for the G20 dinner referred to Murmu as the president of Bharat. It's been suggested that the name India is racist because it's tied to British colonial rule and slavery. However, foreigners far away as Greece identified the region southeast of the Indus River as India, even before Alexander the Great's Indian campaign of the 3rd century BC. So, what's your take on this controversy, Vince?
To me, this seems like a natural phase that every country goes through when it decolonizes. They have to question, basically, if you change ruler, like India has done from the British Raj to self-rule and democracy, you have to question every single assumption within your culture, within your society, and see if it still holds up from the viewpoint of having a new rulership. So India, of course, like New Zealand, will have to ask themselves if they still want to be called by their original name, or if they want to be called by something that comes from within that nation rather from without that nation. Some Indians, they want to change to Bharat. Now, that'll be interesting. I'm not sure what the adjective of Bharat is. I'm not sure with India, of course, you know that people from there are called Indians. So I'm not sure what people from Bharat will be called, but I suppose that's all part of it. I guess we just have to find that out if they did change the name.
There are some people who think that it would be a good idea for New Zealand's name to be changed. Do you think it would be helpful from any perspective at all to make changes to New Zealand's name or even to her flag for that matter?
I don't think it'll be helpful to change the name because the name New Zealand is already well recognised around the world. It's already a mark of quality in a lot of high-paying markets, and there's no real reason to jeopardise this just for the sake of feeling good. I've got no problem with New Zealand being called New Zealand. I think it's a perfectly accurate name. Regarding the flag, I think that perhaps the flag doesn't really represent our national psyche, our national character so much, but it's not clear really what would, because we're a bit of a fragmented people. So I think perhaps at some point in the future, if there's some movement that did unify us, that unified all the disparate strands of the New Zealand nation, then perhaps they would have a flag that we could unify under. So perhaps the right flag for New Zealand hasn't been invented yet, but I'm quite happy with the name.
Well, we are living through a time of unprecedented social change. But as we've mentioned several times on this show, the change is not all social. This year we've experienced unprecedented earthquakes and wildfires, as well as torrential flooding and devastating cyclones. We've also just had the hottest 3 months on record, the United Nations Weather Agency said on Wednesday. At this point in time, with the high levels of anxiety and stress, it is important to be able to step back and distinguish between weather and climate, though, isn't it, Vince?
It is important. I think the most important thing is just to not panic. It's possible that the human race has actually cooked the environment of this planet such that we're all going to die. It's possible, but the most important thing is just to not panic and just to console oneself with a belief in the fundamental all-rightness of the universe, understand that what we're doing here really is just a game to entertain the gods. And so it doesn't ultimately need to cause despair if we have caused damage to the world's environment. We can still enjoy our lives, and that might be hard for some people. I know there's a lot of climate despair going around right now. There's a lot of people who think, what's the point in even living if we've destroyed the environment? But I think that we need to think more positively and just take it more as it comes.
Yes. Well, that brings me to the third bizarre statement of the week. We can still avoid the worst climate chaos, said UN's Guterres, adding, we don't have a moment to lose. Can we avoid the worst if India, China, Australia, and South Korea are not on board? And why is he in such a tearing hurry?
Well, we probably can't avoid the worst if the nations you mentioned are not on board. But the reason why he's in such a tearing hurry is because it has long been believed by United Nations scientists that we have an imperative to keep the global temperature under 1.5 degrees above the baseline of the pre-industrial temperature. The belief is that if the global temperature goes above 1.5 degrees above the baseline, the pre-industrial baseline, then the consequences for the climate are going to make life extremely difficult for human beings. But the problem is we're already at 1.5%. It's already, in other words, the climate has already warmed 1.5% from the pre-industrial baseline. So really, if we are going to save our skins from climate disaster, we have to act soon. And that means what a lot of people aren't going to want to hear, which is that we need to consume less. And that's going to be tricky because our whole society is essentially based around consumption. the more you consume, the happier you feel. So really, and this is hard, we're going to need an entire spiritual revolution to save the environment. And that spiritual revolution is going to have to lead us to stop consuming and to be grateful for other things, such as each other, such as the social connections and things that we can control without using too many resources, especially fossil fuels.
Well, this next statement leaves me speechless. Hipkins said last week that there were no forced vaccinations. How is he able to lie like this, Vince? Is he psychopathic?
Probably is the psychopath. Probably the simple facts that politics selects for psychopaths, that politics selects for shameless liars, is how he was able to do this. This really is a shameless lie from Hipkins, and it's a disgusting one, and it's one that's created a lot of anger. You've seen on his Instagram page where there's on Instagram where he was being cited as having said this on the video. There's a stream of comments, all anti-Hipkins, all people who are very angry at him. Some people who have been mandated out of their jobs or educational courses, or not being allowed to visit their friends in pubs, not being allowed to get their haircuts, and all because of what the Sixth Labor government did. And for Hipkins to come out and say that no one was coerced into any of these things, and that they all chose it of their own free will, and that they're not to blame, well, that's really low, even by the standards of the Sixth Labor government. That is a shameless lie.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on from that metaphorical excrement that is spewing from Hipkins' lips onto an actual biological emergency in the air. Someone had diarrhea on a flight from the USA to Spain, and the plane had to be turned around, was 8 hours late to its destination. A bit of a crappy flight, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, very crappy one. I actually thought about this, and I thought that if you were a passenger on a plane and you shat yourself, and I've shat myself before, it's not the worst thing that can possibly happen in most cases, but as long as you got to your destination on time, you can always go to the airport showers and clean yourself up and basically get on with your day. But this person unfortunately caused the plane to have to turn back, so everybody was 8 hours late. And I think that would be a real adding insult to injury. That would be really hard to deal with, not only stinking up the whole plane, but also causing them all to be late. Yeah, that would be tough, real tough. I really feel for that person.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for again this week. Please remember that all the links to the articles that we've covered tonight are in the description below. If you like what we do, please support us by giving us a thumbs up and subscribing so you never miss a show. Also, if you share this with your friends, you'll help us spread the word. So thank you once again for joining us. And Vince, what a week that was.
Yeah, cheers, Bob. Cheers, Internet. It's a bit more quiet this week, but it was still interesting in many ways. So I hope to catch you next week.
The Alt Centre are clown world's good guys. They don't fit into boxes neatly enough to be someone else's tools.